everyone. If you just joined us, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. A big thank you to Jamie for organizing that icebreaker activity. Yeah, welcome to our first virtual event of Philly Chi this year. Super excited. This event is called Interviewing the Interviewers, Insights from Recruiters and UX Leaders. We're very excited to have you with us today, so let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so here's a brief look into tonight's agenda. So we just did that awesome icebreaker. We'll dive right into welcome and introductions. Then we'll go into two parts of Q&A. So the first part is a Q&A with our wonderful panelists of some predefined questions curated by our community. Secondly, we have the live Q&A. So during the first portion, we're actually going to be looking at the chat and collecting some questions that will surface up to the panelists. So throughout the event, feel free to use the chat function to ask your questions to any of the panelists, to specific panelists or in general. Yes, and we'll take a look, the board will take a look and kind of curate those from the chat. At the end, we'll go over the raffle winners and do a little closing. All right, so who we are, what is Philly Chi? Philly Chi is a fully volunteer-run organization. We're the local chapter of the Special Interest Group in Computer-Human Interaction under the ACM. So our mission as a group is to organize and host low-cost and accessible events that support educational growth and career readiness throughout the greater Philly region, specifically in the fields of HCI and UX. We're here to create space for learning and community within those fields. My name is Hannah V. Nguyen, and I'm very happy to be this year's board chair. I'm excited to be here with you all, and we'll go ahead and introduce the rest of our board. So Jamie, if you want to kick us off.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm really excited to be back this year as the vice chair. It's kicking off to be a really wonderful year, and we're really excited for what we have in store. And over to Rakshita.
Hi everyone, I am a secretary for this year at Philly Chi. Excited to see you all here. Sheila.
Hi everyone, I'm Shayla. I'm the sponsorship coordinator this year for Philly Chi. I'm really excited for this event and more to come. And Dwani?
Hi everyone, I'm the mentorship volunteer coordinator this year for Philly Chi. We are so excited to have you here. Thank you. Over to Cecilia.
Hi everyone, I'm Cecilia. I'm this year's social media coordinator and I'm looking forward to connecting with y'all and excited to host more events. I'll hand it over to Nancy.
Thank you. Hi, Nancy Burr. I'm community coordinator focusing on growth and really looking forward to this panel. It's going to be a great session and looking forward to connecting with you all. Handing it over to Sidi.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see everybody's faces. I'm Siddhi Rode. I'm community coordinator. I'm really excited for this event, and I thank you for the panelists to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, team. Just a quick reminder before we get started, Philly Chi supports a safe and positive environment. So if you witness any unacceptable behavior tonight or any events, please speak to one of us. Looking forward to getting started. All right, I'll go over some upcoming events. So currently our March 2026 event is in the works. So feel free to follow our social media. We're very excited to announce that very soon. And then we have the IAC conference coming up. Jamie, would you like to give a brief overview of what IAC is?
Of course. This year is the 27th annual gathering of the Information Architecture Conference. And it basically is a conference bringing together IA, UX, content strategy, and design practitioners from around the world. And this year's theme is navigating complexity, clarity, and understanding with information architecture. So it's a couple of days. There's some workshops. There's some really cool things, day of speakers, informational booths. So you should really check it out because it's going to be awesome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jamie. All right, and tonight we're also very excited that we'll be giving away 3 ebooks to very lucky winners. So as you can see, we have some great titles like Design Beyond Devices, Playful Design, and Interviewing Users. So be sure to stay until the end of the event for a chance to win. So these giveaways that we do at all of our events are made possible by our wonderful sponsor, Rosenfeld Media, which is a great publisher of books on UX, design, and research. All right, in addition to Rosenfeld, we'd like to give a thank you to our other sponsors, Bentley Systems, Thomas Jefferson University, and the Judge Group. So we actually have Nancy here, who's a part of the Judge Group. So Nancy, if you want to give a quick blurb about the Judge Group and who they are, we'd love to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I work with the Judge Group. We're a leader in business technology, learning and development, managed services, and talent solutions. We have over 30 offices across US, Canada, and India. Been in business for 56 years. We actually reside in the Wayne office. I actually sit out of that office and lead the creative and marketing recruitment division. So I personally plucked a handful of really amazing recruiters that are focused primarily in the UX space. It could be content, design, strategy. I focus more on sales, and I have the recruiters fill jobs that are both in the temporary and full-time permanent space. So if anyone's looking for work, we're always happy to help anyone in need. And super excited to be a sponsor this year for Philly Kai as well. So looking forward to some great events, especially this one tonight, and excited to meet with everybody. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Nancy.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, we're very excited to introduce our wonderful panelists for tonight. So we're extremely grateful to have such talented experts joining us to share their experience and insights with our community. So thank you so much to Kirstie, Diana, Joe, and Amanda for generously volunteering your time to be here tonight. So Kirstie, would you like to kick us off by introducing yourself and your role? And then we'll go down the line from there.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, all. I'm Kirstie Darko. I am the Senior Global Creative Recruiter at the Judge Group. I am one of the fortunate few that Nancy did pick from our previous roles. Super excited to be part of this panel and looking forward to an engaging conversation.
Awesome. Diana?
Hi, Diana Fanelli. Recently head of UX at Barclays, USCB in Wilmington. I've been working as in senior management for many years and have hired and interviewed many people. So I'm really looking forward to this panel tonight.
Thanks so much, Diana. Joe?
Hey everyone, my name is Joe Pascavage. Nice to see some familiar faces. I am a senior UX leader at Vanguard, where I focus on our B2C products. I've been in the design space for a little over 24 years. And yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you all today. And yeah, I'll pass it off to Amanda.
Hey, hello everyone. I see a few names on the attendee list that I recognize, so really happy to be here today and to connect with all of you again. I currently lead a team of UX researchers at Microsoft, specifically in our enterprise security space. So our team builds products that provide security for AI, as well as AI native capabilities that support cybersecurity teams as they protect their most sensitive data and investigate security incidents. Prior to that, I led research teams at Comcast Business, GSK, and Think Company. And outside of my day job, I'm also an Airbnb superhost. So excited to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the introductions. And yes, okay, we'll go ahead and dive right into our first question. All right, so as many of us here know, working in UX, whether it's design, research, or strategy, this often means navigating kind of like a multi-step application process. So like a lot of roles, we don't just have a cover letter and resume, but we also have a portfolio website and presentation to kind of like showcase our skills and case studies. So one of the biggest questions that we receive from our community is, in today's competitive job market, how can I make my portfolio stand out? So Kirstie, if you want to get us started, or anyone can like hop in and kind of join in on the answer.
Yeah, for sure. I guess from a recruiter perspective, normally when I'm looking at portfolios, I like to take in the overall experience. You're creating something to be highlighted of who you are, what you've done. So when I go on to designers' portfolios, the first thing I like to take in is like how engaging is your landing page, right? The first page that I see, your homepage. If it has a clean aesthetic, or if it at least matches the aesthetic that I'm, whoever client I'm sourcing for, does that have that impact on me the second I see it? And then in terms of looking at case studies, great storytelling is kind of translatable across any level, be it someone who's junior, mid-level to senior level. How this person can really talk through their thinking process. What challenges did you see? How did you overcome them? What teams you were working with? Any results, or maybe what you could have done to improve if you had more time and things like that. So it doesn't have to be a novel case study, but it does need to be in depth and well communicated, well written. It follows a pretty streamlined process of how you did that project. So I'm learning about you in as a strategic designer, as someone who really wants to incorporate business into their user experience. So those are just a few of the things I look for in a portfolio.
I
Are
just
we,
like to add to that and say that really focus on storytelling. Storytelling is your main job as a UX designer. So, in addition to those case studies, make a story out of them. Highlight 3 or 4 cases where you problem solved, and you know, take the interviewer through the beginning to how you define that case study and how you got to your solution. Um, you know, Show that you understood the user's needs. Again, user experience designers are empathy with the users, how to address their challenges and come up with design solutions for it. And if you're able, just show some demonstrated business metrics. Did your contribution to the app increase App Store ratings by 20%? How did you increase user engagement or user satisfaction? And I would also say tailor your projects to specific roles. If you're interviewing at a financial institution, don't have all healthcare type projects. Have something that's very specific to the industry that you want to go into. And just really highlight your unique design voice. You should have a brand that shows throughout your portfolio as you're presenting.
yeah, I think something that I feel like can help you stand out. And this is advice that I give people in a lot of like the mentoring and kind of coaching calls that I do pretty frequently, is if you feel like you're just checking boxes, pause and reflect on that, right? Because a lot of times people think like, okay, I gotta have the home page, I have the contact page, I have build my case studies and all that. Um, I think I think it's worthwhile to consider like, are you just fitting into the mold that everyone else is doing? Because from a recruiter or hiring manager's perspective, they're likely going through hundreds of portfolios, and a lot of them can start to blend together. So I think to what Diana was saying, especially to figure out like your brand, your voice. I always tell people and this is unique to me, so I can't speak for everyone, but one of the very first things that I usually do when I go to a portfolio is I go to someone's like about me page because I just want to get to know them on a more like human level, before I even get into the work. I would also just make sure it's usable, pressure test it. There's so many times when I get on like a portfolio review with like a mentee, and I'll be like, "Oh, your LinkedIn link goes to just a blank Google search page. Like, just double check those things." Or yeah, just try to put yourself in the shoes of a hiring manager, or get feedback. Just get like honest, raw feedback from your friends, family. There's plenty of resources. To go sign up and get like free mentorship as well. Um, Another thing that I think could also help you stand out is I've been kind of harping on this idea of showcases over case studies. So more kind of micro-sized type of case studies can be something that could help when you have a project where it's like, oh, I didn't do every single step of the process, but it could still highlight areas that are worthwhile, like calling attention to. And then lastly, I would say just be okay with not being done. I feel like so many with your portfolio, that is, before you start applying, there's so many people I feel like that um, are just trying to make sure every single T is crossed and I is dotted. And if like the slightest like thing is off, like I don't know if I like this color button versus this color button, um, you can keep iterating and make improvements to it, right? So definitely make sure it's in like a good enough place, but don't feel like you have to achieve absolute perfection before you start applying.
Yeah, these are all really amazing points, and I am aligned with a lot of what the other participants have already shared. But some additional context I'll share from my perspective is kind of similar to Diana. I think the storytelling is probably the most critical piece for me. I want to very quickly be able to skim a portfolio and grasp what the business problem and context were that you were working within. That's really, really important to me to understand the thought process that you went through as you were working within a very specific context, a specific environment, with the acknowledgement that you may not always, as Joe said, have time to do every step of the design process, the idealized design process. And so if a portfolio looks a little too perfect, like a perfect double diamond, or you're showing like a very linear design thinking process, it may not come off as that authentic or believable. I kind of want to see the messy reality of product making, and to see evidence that you've worked in a complex organization with complex dynamics, ambiguous problem spaces, messy constraints, and that you're able to navigate that in a way that drives clarity, meaning, impact. And I think from a research perspective, particularly what I'm looking for is to see how you influence decision making. So not just we presented insights and everyone agreed and now the product is perfect, but how did you actually convince a reluctant stakeholder? How did you get buy-in and support for a new idea? How did you actually influence the roadmap? I think demonstrating the hard skills, the rigorous research methodology, that really is the easy part. It's that other stuff that can be a little trickier, and it comes through storytelling. But I think that that piece is arguably more important in understanding a candidate's ability to really drive meaningful work forward in a complex organization. So to me, that would be the standout characteristics. And then I'll also add that I think obviously in this day and age, AI is super important. But for me, it's not that impressive to just have a very flashy vibe coded prototype or some really slick demo. I mean, that's really cool, but I want to see you applying the user-centered design mindset to the challenge of AI. So thinking about what problem are you trying to solve with AI? Are there specific metrics you're trying to influence? How did you approach experimentation? How did you decide what the right AI tool was for the job? How are you evaluating the AI quality or output? So I think if you're going to incorporate elements of AI into your portfolio, I think you should think through some of those questions too, and make sure your narrative around what you're presenting answers some of that.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Some really good insights. Seems like the common theme is storytelling is very important. Some level of structure is very important. So is metrics, but also having that unique factor to make your portfolio stand out. I'm seeing some really good questions in the chat. So the board is kind of in the background curating these. So yeah, definitely keep these great questions coming in, and we're excited to address those. Yeah, right after these couple of questions. Alrighty, transitioning over to our second question, and I think this kind of is similar to what Diana was sharing about having specific portfolio case studies if you're targeting a specific industry. So in the current job market, should I position myself as a UX specialist, so specializing, say, like mobile app design, conversation design, like one of the many niches within UX, Or should I position myself as more of a UX generalist, and why?
So, um, it's difficult to say, right? Because when I'm reviewing resumes, I'm looking more so of the skills and less so of the titles in itself. Um, and so it really does depend on what the client is looking to help solve by bringing this person on. Um, and it also depends on, if you're fresh out of school, you just finished, your courses or, your university education. It's difficult to say, to promote yourself as either a specialist or a generalist, because when you don't have necessary experience to really say you like which way or the other. Um, I normally have spoken to more junior talents and I told them, you know, probably try to align yourself with more of industries and really try to focus on, products that those industries would typically involve themselves in. To be a UX specialist, I'm assuming you have the necessary experience and skills to be specialized in that space. So I would expect that from someone who probably has at least more than 3 years of experience, and already has some type of understanding of self and understanding of uh, where they fit into this business models. So it's a little challenging to say, to have someone, pick and choose if they're going to be more of a specialist or a generalist. It really does come down to skill. So just know that as a recruiter, we don't necessarily have a say in one way or another. Typically, it's what the hiring team wants. If they're looking for someone who's more specialist, that's what I'm going to be targeting. If they're looking for someone who does, you know, full end to end, they do it all. They've done desktops, or they've done dashboards. They've done, you know, any type of platform. Um, it's really going to be dictated by what the hiring team is looking for.
So I'd like to follow up with Kirstie and say that true, the beginning of your career, it's hard to decide where you want to be, and you need to be more of a generalist. But I may be a little bit unpopular tonight and say that I think the future of UX really lies more with specialists, especially after going through my third agile transformation. So I went through three different companies that had an agile transformation. And generalists have long been the unicorns of UX. They do everything, but the trend is really shifting towards specialization for this reason. Product management handles strategy. And then a lot of companies have dedicated user researchers. Um, the last few companies I worked with had their own content designer. So that's recognized now as its own discipline. And, it's kind of now the design organizations focus on design systems. So all the designers are given a specific design system to work within. So there's not that kind of individual contributor factor as much as it used to be. So, we even have UX engineers. When I first started in UX, you did everything. You did wireframing, you did the design, you did the coding, you did the research, and that's not happening so much anymore. Now we even have a dedicated design ops team to ensure the collaboration throughout the whole agile team. So, I really feel that, generalists for the most part, unless you're a very, very beginning of your career, is kind of 20th century and not 21st century. And, unfortunately, the shift also means more meetings because you're meeting with different disciplines on a project. You're not just meeting, one to one with one product owner. So, you know, just one person solving for the entire application or whatever it is you're working on just really isn't an effective way of working anymore. Um, and I know that a lot of companies have, and I've had this experience where the information architecture, other applications are very poor. And some of them feel that using AI to figure out their information architecture is a solution, but it really isn't. It really hasn't been successful for anyone. So this collaboration of different disciplines within UX tends to be more successful in, creating a good product.
Yeah, there's so many great thoughts on what both of you have mentioned so far. And like, do generalists exist? Yes. Is it better to be identify yourself as a generalist or a specialist? I think it depends to a degree. Chances are if you're newer and you just like graduated from school, the chances are less likely that you're going to be like a generalist of some kind, but it doesn't mean that's impossible. But like you could go the route of like, oh, maybe I need to cast a wide net. And if I'm newer in the field and I just graduated, I enjoy research and I also enjoy doing wireframing. That doesn't quite say like you're a generalist, but you're a little bit more like multifaceted. I would lean into that and think about how you can identify with what you're strong in. But just know, like I wouldn't necessarily say um, if you did research on like one project, you start identifying yourself as a researcher now, right? I think you need to feel confident about what your jobs you're applying to and what you're going after. Um, and whether things become more niche or generalists become more of a thing again, that's something that gets acquired over time, you know? I do think there's something to be said about um, the more that you appreciate all aspects, you don't necessarily have to like knock it out of the park, but all aspects of design can make you a stronger UXer. But uh, if you all don't know what like a T-shaped designer is, I say that to people a lot of times, but like if you like imagine the capital letter T, you have like your horizontal axis, which are your wing disciplines, and the vertical axis, which are like your core disciplines. Um, Kind of like map that out, right? And that can kind of help you understand how you could almost sort of like position yourself if you are specializing more in like AI or UI design or design systems, but you do have some focus areas of like strategy and whatnot. But also, yeah, just like I think I think it really does depend. If you could just focus on identifying like who you are versus thinking like, well, I have to be this or I have to have this skill. I think you're just going to set yourself up for failure then, because if you do get an interview, you're not going to be able to speak to those things, you know, and there's nothing like more awkward than being in a situation like that. So, um, but yeah, Amanda, curious your thoughts.
Yeah, this has been a really great conversation. And I'm gonna echo what everyone else has already said, which is it depends.
Yeah.
But I think the additional factor I'll add there is I think it depends on what type of role you're targeting and in what type of organization. So typically in large enterprise organizations, there's a lot more specialization and there's clear boundaries between certain types of roles. Versus in a startup or a consultancy environment, there may be more flexibility there and also maybe more of an expectation that you can or should wear multiple hats and that you need to stretch across disciplines or specializations in order to deliver a particular project vertical. So I think, thinking about what type of environment you want to work in will also help you figure out whether you should position yourself as a specialist or a generalist. But I think with that said, we can all benefit from some foundational understanding of how different roles and disciplines work. So to build on Joe's point, really developing those strong T-shaped capabilities and skill sets can be really beneficial and really help you unlock new ways of influencing and collaborating with different cross-functional teams. So I think it really helps to be aware of what the full product making process looks like, so that you can have really effective conversations with team members in any role. And then thinking about the environment you want to work in will help you figure out where or if to specialize.
I also
Awesome.
want to add that I'm not saying that if you're a specialist that you shouldn't have broader knowledge of other disciplines. If you're a designer, you definitely need to understand research and maybe, conduct some of your own research. You're not totally restricted in your role. You should know how to wireframe, you should know how to design, you should have your fingers in those other areas along with your specialty.
I also kind of want to throw in a different perspective as well. Um, versus when you're working in startup versus working at a enterprise company, it can also differ. I know for startup companies, they tend to want someone who is a generalist. So our popular, product designer, um, but also, they do want you to have some type of speciality, but they're going to ask you to do it all from, the research all the way to the execution. They also want you to be the strategist behind um, some of those design initiatives. So depending on the type of company you're targeting, I know agencies also tend to lean a little bit more for generalists because they're working with different clients and they're not necessarily going to be so niche in their space. Um, so it really does depend on what you're targeting. Like if you are targeting for large companies that are like Fortune 500 companies, being a specialist is probably going to be more ideal, as opposed to more of that industry where it's super fast paced, super startup, everyone is wearing multiple hats. Sometimes you might not just be executing on the design, you could be doing content design, supporting with the copy, or you're probably, working more on strategy or innovation. Um, so understanding where you're applying to and what exactly they're looking for, should you kind of like reevaluate your resume, or maybe adding in projects into your portfolio to kind of show that you can do it all. Or if you have that specialty, you want to highlight that too.
Yeah, plus one, everything Kirstie you said. And also think about too, like, I think Diana, you said this, but a lot of companies like have their own content strategy team or have their own research team, especially like the larger, like the Vanguards and Microsofts and all of that. But also consider like if you do identify as a generalist and you're going into one of those companies as like say product designer, just make that up. Um, be cautious of how much you flex your generalist skills too much, because then people might be like, oh, so and so stepping on my toes, or like, why are they starting to do the research, or why are they starting to do content strategy? But that's where like I think if you appreciate all the different aspects, you can communicate a little bit more effectively with those individuals. So, or those different disciplines. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, all. I think that's really good insight. And I think we can all come to agreement that it really does depend. And like maybe instead of like a top-bottom approach, maybe like it starts with you as the UX designer or researcher. Like what company do I want to work for? Do I see myself being a specialist or generalist, and kind of like deciding from there? Yeah, great thoughts. All right, moving on to our last question. Also, I just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for popping some really good questions in the chat. Excited to move over to the live Q&A very soon. We do have one more question here, just to kind of wrap us up. So I will switch over. So our last question of this portion is, in a competitive UX market, what sets top finalists apart? So this is a very stressful situation, like especially like as an applicant, knowing that there's just like 2 to 3 other candidates left, and there's a decision to be made. So like kind of like what sets apart the final applicants when you're kind of like assessing their portfolios and applications.
Yeah, that's a um that's a really tough one to really speak to. And I hate having to say it really does depend. Um, but I just want all the designers on this call to know that it's not you. It really isn't. There are some talented designers I've seen out of different industries that just did not fit for the role. And it really does come down to, do they have the industry experience? Do they have the right projects that are very similar to what the hiring team is looking for? Is that being called out in their resume and their portfolio? It comes down to location. It comes down to so many different aspects that it's really hard to define who is a top finalist apart from everyone else. It's competitive because you have not only junior designers who were from that 2020, 21 boom, when there was a lot of courses going on to be a UX designer, to where we currently stand with a lot of really great senior talent who have worked for large companies or who have been doing it for many years. They're on the market. So you're all competing for the same role. And it's, like I said, it's not a personal thing. It really does come down to who is going to fit 90 to 100% of that opportunity. And that's really how I, really source through different talents. Sometimes when I'm sourcing, you're not going to show up because you just didn't fit the keywords I was looking for, or the your portfolio probably is not similar to the aesthetics of the particular brand that I'm supporting for. I'm not going to necessarily, place someone who's worked in e-commerce in a financial company. Even though there might be some overlap, it doesn't necessarily translate well in understanding the nuances that people from the financial sector, um, have to evaluate and understand the user needs. It's very different from someone who is, shopping for products. So a lot goes into the thought process when looking for capable talents. Um, but at the very minimum, you should make sure that your portfolio looks clean. You should make sure that you don't have any grammar errors. Your resume should be, a clean understanding of what you've done in your previous roles. It has, data points that back up your success and accomplishments. Your resume is not longer than, 2 to 3 pages long. If you have a lot of experience, really try to keep it under 10 years of experience on your resume. Um, and also sometimes referrals help when it gets too competitive. Sometimes it's nice to have someone who has either worked for that company to give you a good reference. Also, networking helps a lot too. It's a lot of it is who you know sometimes. But in terms of like the general speaking of how can you get noticed, it's really difficult to say, honestly. So
Awesome. Thank you, Kirstie. All right, Diana?
So I would say that Kirstie is looking at candidates a little bit earlier than I would as a hiring manager. So generally, when it gets to be a finalist, there's probably maybe two people tops that we're considering for the final role. And I would say a couple of things. One, even though I'm the hiring manager, you often get hired by committee. So there may be like four other people looking at the candidate and voting on who gets chosen if there's two people competing for the same role. And in that decision-making process, a lot of it is whether they're going to fit culturally with the company or with the department that they're being hired into. I know that's been a big thing in several of the companies that I worked with, whether they would fit with the culture. Secondly, I mean, they're looking for somebody that's, has strong design skills, business acumen, clear communication, someone that's comfortable presenting and, presenting articulately. Um, you know, I know my department in particular presented a lot in the boardroom. So we had someone who'd be comfortable presenting to C-suite. And someone just, easy to be with and easy to engage conversation with, in conversation with others. So, a lot of it's just kind of personality. If you are a finalist, I would say keep in touch with the hiring managers or whoever you interviewed with, just remind them, not too often. You don't want to be pestering them every day, but like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still interested in the position. And, make them aware, like have your name, in front of them on their desktop, so they remember you. Sometimes it takes a little while to make a decision. So it may be, 3 weeks, a month before you hear back on a final decision. But, I would say don't give up. And I would also say if in the case that you don't get the position, be gracious because you never know what will happen. Someone may drop out, the other candidate may turn the position down. And if you've been gracious with your interviewers, there's always an opportunity for them to offer the job to you, secondly.
Yeah. Love that. Love the positive spin on that, Diana. Apologies to put you on the spot, Joe and Amanda, but if we could keep the response to just about like a quick speed run 1 minute, just to make sure we're on track with our agenda today, that'd be appreciated. But super excited to hear your thoughts on this
Oh
one.
yeah, no problems at all. Yeah, so I can kind of take a quick spin at my thoughts around the way that I was like reading the question wasn't necessarily like at the stage of the interview that you're in, but more just like setting yourself apart as a more ideal candidate in general. So I could just say that from a lot of the conversations I have in a sea of many, it can be challenging to really kind of identify what's making me different, and kind of like real talk, is there an oversaturation of like entry level designers? Yes. Is there an undersaturation of entry level jobs? Yes. And I think like everyone's like constantly like, oh, we want the most senior people, we want the whatever. And I think that's a mindset that I've seen some like positive change in like shifting a little bit, but I think just kind of calling a spade is something to 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 consider here, but also uh you need to think about how you can be a disruptor, right? So if you're just doing the same thing that everyone else is doing, you're going to stand out less, and you need to think about how to challenge yourself, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like I talk to so many people that are like, I don't want to post things on LinkedIn, like post things on LinkedIn, and just some like general tough love, ask yourself like how much do you want it, right? And I'm trying to go fast, Hannah. I have just like one quick story. I'll promise I won't take a lot of time, but like for example, a few years ago I experienced a layoff, right? And I am like a sole provider for like a family of five, right? And I wanted it and I needed it like pretty badly. So I remember I was doing different things of like I leaned into my superpowers, my disruptor of I had a lot of like client testimonials and coworker testimonials that I was using to like advocate for me on LinkedIn, in my cover letters and my referrals. So just think about like what your disruptor can be and set yourself apart. Sorry, I hope that was fast enough, Hannah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joe. All right, Amanda.
Yeah, of course. So I love all the responses so far. The only thing I'll add is I think from my perspective, in this competitive job market, pretty much every candidate that we're reviewing as a hiring manager has the right set of hard skills. And it really comes down to those soft skills that kind of contribute to this sense of job fit or culture add. And those are definitely less tangible, but really, really critical to figuring out who is going to be a contributor on my team that has impact and can hit the ground running right away. So to me, that's somebody who demonstrates a strong growth mindset. There's somebody who is willing to learn and adapt to change, but also has a really good critical eye. They bring good judgment. They ask good questions. They have a well-formed perspective or point of view, and they're able to use that to influence decision making and to influence change within the organization, somebody who's a strong collaborator. So as much as you can lean into those stories as you talk about your own work and as you talk about things in your portfolio or your case studies, I think being able to demonstrate some of that stuff that is a little less tangible will really help a hiring manager or a hiring team envision what it might be to work with you and want you as a long-term contributor on their team.
Love that. Thank you so much, Amanda. I feel like all roads lead back to storytelling, and it just reminds me tonight like how important of a skill that is as a UXer, regardless if you're a researcher or designer. So yeah, thank you so much. That's a great wrap to the first portion of our panel. So thank you for those wonderful insights. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jamie and team who have been curating events, or sorry, questions in the chat tonight. So Jamie, if you want to go ahead and take over.
Thank you. And as I get into this, I just want to say there's so many great questions in the chat. We won't have time for all of them. And I definitely encourage any of the panelists to go through and answer some of them if they feel like it in the chat, as we may not get to them all, but I want to ask a couple of really great ones up front, ones that were voted and had a bunch of interest. So the first one I wanted to ask you all is from a member who was speaking on the pressure of being of the AI hype on the job market. And they were asking how much are UX teams really using AI in their process. They said that they tend to take a more cautious methodological approach as they experiment. And they're just curious about like how much teams are really using AI in their process.
Is this for anyone? Are we going in order?
Yes, you can you as long we'll try to just do anyone, and if we smash into each other, maybe we'll do hands.
Okay. I mean, I think there's an importance to a degree, but again, it depends. Some like larger companies are just starting to like dabble in how to use AI in their day-to-day environments. I do think that there should be some general curiosity of how it can help make you more efficient or more effective, just as a working individual in general, not just necessarily like, oh, how fast can Figma make this wireframe, right? Chances are probably not that fast because you have to keep prompting over and over again to get it to where you want it to be. But yeah, that's just like my immediate two thoughts is it's not going away. Is it very like all the rage right now? Yes, I think it's at some point going to like normalize a little bit. But how can you use it to your ability to be efficient, right? Like maybe it is a superpower of yours that you can highlight in your in your workflow or your case studies or resume. Um, that's just like one takeaway for myself. So curious others' thoughts.
I would
Yeah,
also say, oh, I'm sorry.
go
I would
ahead.
just say general knowledge of AI. A lot of companies are training people to use AI, not necessarily in their designs, but in the final products or even just for efficiency. So, efficiency of emails, scheduling meetings, meeting notes, that kind of thing. So just general knowledge, and just try to stay up to date on it.
Yeah, I think that's all sound advice. And I would say, kind of building on what Joe started with, I think it depends on the organization. And so again, as you're thinking about the type of environment you're targeting and where you want to work, there's a lot of companies that are positioning themselves as AI native and AI first and have really adopted that as sort of a core principle to how they do product making. So if that is of interest to you, there are companies that are very heavily leaning into AI in all aspects of work, and have top-down support for incorporation of AI in different parts of the workflow. And then there's other companies that are a little bit more cautious and taking their time, waiting to kind of see how things pan out. At Microsoft, we are heavily experimenting with AI, and we're approaching it from a perspective of really deeply examining our end-to-end delivery process and figuring out where there are opportunities to optimize and where AI can support our journey. And so, time, efficiency, productivity are all good drivers, but the other areas that I get a lot of benefit from AI from are in AI as a cognitive thought partner, AI as a starting point for inspiration and thinking about ideas through a different lens. So you can use AI to build prototypes, but you can also use AI in other ways to just sort of creatively inspire new thinking. So I think it depends on the type of organization, but I would say there are plenty that are using it in very real and tangible ways.
I definitely see it as more of a strategic thought partner, thought starter than I do
Hmm.
like high end pumping out like designs, I think if you could demonstrate that in any way, like I used Copilot the other day, not just saying it, Amanda, because you're here, but with Microsoft, to I pulled the script from a transcription from a meeting and I was like, hey, I want to build this decomposition or like journey map. Give me a first crack at it based on the conversation. And that's like a great story to tell. Like, yeah, like that was an effective use of how to get unstuck or just move quickly. Um, Kirstie, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say I'm a stakeholder in this piece of the conversation, honestly. Um, but I've seen designers utilize AI really creatively, especially in their portfolios. So, for example, I've seen one person in particular that I actually helped, bring on to Vanguard. She had AI chatbot embedded into her portfolio. And I was able to actually engage and get an understanding of who this person was as an individual, as a designer, and it was actually really interesting how, um, even if you're not actively working with AI or you're not building an AI tool, or you're integrating it into your everyday work, you can show your creativity incorporating AI, and that at least shows the understanding, the interest in it, the thinking outside the box when it comes to your own work. So AI is so new. I don't necessarily expect to see a lot of designers who have been actively building out, um, AI tools in any shape or form, but being able to have that like intimacy with knowing how to utilize it or when to bring it into your own process, using it as more like a partner as opposed to having it really supplement some of your work. Um, so there are ways to showcase that, you know, you can do the job with AI.
Excellent. Great answers. Thank you so much. And for the next one, I want to kind of combine a couple. There is a theme going on with like asking about how to storytell and showcase in portfolios. So people were kind of asking about like, what is really the best way to showcase and storytell? Number of slides, how to provide enough context about the project and process, but keep it unrepetitive, easily readable, because explaining projects and explaining your thought process can get long, and people hear a lot about bullet points and how it is readable. How do we keep them readable, keep these bullet points, but also still storytell in a way that feels authentic and in a way that flows?
I think one thing, because I know I brought up the showcases thing, the way that I kind of see it is think of like maybe not like quite this literal and how I'm gonna build off of this metaphor, but explain it to me like I'm five type of like mentality, right? So like you need to consider how close you are to it and how not so close everyone else is that's going to be viewing it, right? Um, Something that I work with the students that I work with pretty often, where they come to me with a CVS receipt of a case study, right? And I think that that's a great starting point, but then challenge yourself to like, what are like the key like highlighted things or like what's missing? And I'll oftentimes challenge people like, how can you reduce this by 50% by just like by just being more clear and effective in how you're communicating via your case study or a showcase. Um, and then maybe even challenge yourself like a third time, like, okay, now cut that down by like 25%. And sort of like weigh the differences between the two, the different variations and get input on like, is there anything that feels like it's missing? Oh yeah. Do you have any data? Yeah, actually I did. I should have put that in there and I didn't do that. I think it's a good way to kind of like redline uh your own work.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I've had people come in and present their case studies to me, and they kind of start in the middle. Like I like with the assumption that I know exactly what they're talking about. And I'll be sitting there like, huh? Like what? I don't get it. And then they'll go back and think, oh, well, the beginning of the story is this. So when you're telling a story, don't start in the middle. Start at the beginning. Pretend that I arrived on this earth today and have no idea what you're talking about, and explain it from there. It doesn't need to be lengthy. Just go through the different steps of your journey and explain it to me very simply.
Yeah, I love all of this advice. What I would add is, so there was a podcast I listened to many years ago where the interviewer had a conversation with Francis Ford Coppola, the director of The Godfather, and was asking him essentially how he storytells through cinema, through film. And I really loved the way he described it, and it's something I think about very frequently in my own work. He basically said, I think about one word that encapsulates the entire production, the entire movie that I'm trying to make. And for every single interaction that the characters have with each other, every single theme, every single scene that they're in, how does it reinforce that one word that is the essence of the film? And for The Godfather, the word is succession. And so every single interaction, every single element of that film is designed to reinforce that one theme. And I think about that when I write research reports too. It's like, what is the one thing that I want people to take away from this? What is the theme? What is the so what of it? And I think you should think about your portfolio or your case studies in that same lens, and it might help you just sort of distill the most important thing to communicate about that story.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with the other panelists. But I mean, it actually brings up a really great point. I think there's a lot of people who could benefit from taking a course in screenwriting, because when it comes to storytelling, it does follow uh, a very seamless process in how you want your audience to feel, to relate, to understand the actual messaging, right? And so you start off the movie by showing, who is the main the main person going to be, what is their MO, what's their challenge, how do they what are their behavior towards certain things that kind of already helps instill what to expect from this main character, and they're going through their challenges and they're trying to understand that solution or coming to a solution. And then you see them going through all these hurdles and they just keep getting up and they keep fighting and they try working through it until they come to the end. That is storytelling. But in this aspect for designers, I would say that for more junior talents, I've noticed that there is a lack of visual storytelling, where they could really benefit from understanding visual hierarchies and typography a little bit more. Um, don't think of storytelling just in like the literal sense. You also are creating this experience for me when I'm reviewing your work. And sometimes a lot of junior designers will bold everything sometimes. Like they'll just have the wrong messaging, you know, out there in front of me, and they think they're highlighting this information for me, and it's not even relevant to the the point you're trying to make. And that shows there's a lack of maturity in your design. So being able to visually guide me through what you're working through, having me almost understand you and your decision making. And that comes up a lot in the visual hierarchy. Like you want to be able to have images that is reflective of, you know, what you were doing at this point in your process. Um, and I think that's just as equally as important as getting the content out. You really want to not only put the content out there, but you want me to follow that storyline with you, see what you're seeing.
I love that. I love this screenwriting class tip. The hero's journey definitely changed my life writing wise. So excellent. And a lot of colleges will let you take one-off courses too if there isn't one just like on a random site. So Harvard's doing free classes also right now. Our third question is I'm going to combine a couple more. So there's some folks with very specific experience, neuroscience research, architecture. They're wondering like if they have publications from research jobs or architectural projects that relate to their UX. Is it relevant or valuable to include those projects or artifacts in their portfolio? Things like GitHub for data science. How interested our recruiters are in these? Are they for UX research jobs?
So I don't know if Amanda wanted to take this one first,
You
or
can
if
go
I should just.
first. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll piggyback on you.
Okay, sure. A lot of UX researchers have that academic background. So it's very common to actually have someone who was once a, academic researcher move into a more of a product um, space. And I don't think it's really a challenge. It's really how you're able to relate your work into what you could bring to an organization. So I don't think anyone who's coming from academia should be, um, scared to apply or compete with other UX researchers. You all kind of started from the same space. So,
Yeah, yeah, I 1,000% agree. I think that a lot of researchers, especially in large enterprise organizations like Microsoft, do come from academic backgrounds. They are professionally trained researchers with, a whole catalog of methodologies that they are experts in, and they've done a lot of work to get there and to earn PhDs and other degrees. And so I think it is very common that we see publications from other disciplines on resumes, on portfolio sites, and it's not a detractor in any way. Usually, I find it very interesting because people come from all sorts of different academic backgrounds into this field, and to Joe's point earlier about learning a little bit more about the applicant, I like to kind of understand what their academic interests were and how that translated into what their current career path is. So it's definitely not a detriment to include it. But to Kirstie's point, you do need to make sure that you're framing how that previous experience translates directly to the role that you are actively applying for. So being able to demonstrate that you've applied those methodologies in a business context and that you understand how those organizations potentially operate and how your skills would be valuable to that team.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? Or I can move on if everything's kind of been said there.
I was gonna just plus one all of it. I think, yeah, you can move on.
Yeah, ditto.
Oh, Jamie,
Jamie,
you're unmute.
you're muted. Yeah.
Thank you. This one's shifting gears a little bit. A lot of people were interested in it, and it's a little bit more of a technical question, especially for hiring managers and recruiters. How do you source candidates to hire? So LinkedIn, specific job boards, which ones? Internally, they really want to know like where you're finding people to hire.
I would say
An-
any and all.
Answer is it depends.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, I know Kirstie, you probably had the strongest point of view on this, but different stages of a company to the size of a company. Like I've been in previous roles where there's like maybe more small to medium size consultancy, and we did all like the vetting and manually looking through the internal kind of like recruiting type of tool ourselves, sifting through resumes. To you'll hear things people are constantly asking about, like, oh, is the resume scanners, and is my resume set up the right way? Am I getting all the keywords in there? To hiring someone like Kirstie to do all the dirty work for you, to having like internal recruiters. So there's so many different ways. One thing that I try to do though, regardless of where I'm at, is if I come across someone that I am just generally interested in, I may pass it on to someone like Kirstie to be like, hey, like I'm kind of interested in this person. Would you mind vetting them for me? That sort of stuff does happen. So I don't know if Kirstie had mentioned to you a lot, so I don't know if you have thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, no, he's definitely right about that one. But from um, the recruiter's process, um, how I tend to source for talents, I definitely will go to my our internal ATS system, and then I'll also look at LinkedIn as well. And if you haven't done so already, please add your portfolio to your profile on LinkedIn, because I will be looking for that first. Once I hit your profile, I want to see if you have any type of documentation, any case studies that is readily available for me to review. Unless it's like password protected, I totally understand. And probably makes me even more excited to, connect and hear more about your background, especially if you come from an industry that I'm, sourcing for. Um, in terms of keywords, yes, it is really important when we are sourcing for qualified candidates. So I see a lot of senior level to leadership level talent not necessarily fill out um, their history. They just kind of have like their titles and some skills, but they don't necessarily have like what they've done in those roles. And it's really tough to gauge if this person could be a strong fit for the role I'm supporting with or not. Um, so that is really important, um, to make sure that, yes, keywords do matter, because that's how I'm initially looking for you. It's through keywords. And for even tougher finds, I will, I'll go to different boards. I have even done Google searches as well. There is like a schematic search that you can do to find talents who might not be on LinkedIn, and if I can find their portfolios, oftentimes their resume is on their portfolio. So making yourself have that digital footprint is really helpful for you. Um, and aside from that, networking with hiring managers, networking with recruiters in this space. I would definitely say it's more advantageous to network with hiring managers or decision makers in this space as opposed to recruiters, because there's not a lot of creative recruiters, design recruiters, um, who are even specialized in the space. It's incredibly tiny. So being able to connect with a recruiter in any organization will still be really great too, but really connect with the hiring managers or any, like I said, any decision maker.
Yeah, I'd also like to echo that there have been times when people have reached out to me for jobs and they might be really good, but I needed to put them through a recruiter like Kirstie to actually hire them. So while it's good to network, it's very hard to get hired directly by a hiring manager. We have a whole hierarchy that we need to go through, posting jobs internally first through HR, having HR source, which usually is a disaster, and then, going out, trying to attract people on LinkedIn, but ultimately they usually need to be vetted by a recruiter in a lot of the larger organizations that I've worked for.
That actually brings up a really good sub question I want to ask between both of your answers, which I hear a lot in our community and anytime we do these kinds of events. Do any of you have any kind of advice for people who are reaching out? Because I hear a lot of like, I'm told to network, I'm told to reach out, but then every time I reach out to somebody, it doesn't go anywhere. I don't know what to say. And I think part of the confusion may come from people reaching out to hiring managers versus recruiters versus managers and not knowing exactly how to network from just a kind of a cold call message. So what would your advice be to someone asking a question like that?
Feel like, Kirstie, you said something really fascinating that's sticking with me of just like building your digital footprint, And I think that applies to networking in the sense of building your presence, like even through like somebody that's seems like a very well established mentor that probably has connections, or like building connections with others that have connections to the potential connections you want to make connections with, right? The cold messaging is sometimes a shot in the dark. Do I discourage people from doing it? No. I think like you have, again, it kind of comes back to like you have to do what you have to do, especially like if you're in like a situation of trying to find a job when you really need a job, right? But I think it's like not just like networking from the sense of, oh, I sent the hiring manager a message, but they didn't reply. Like that's not networking. Um, I think you had to kind of cast the net to network.
Yeah, 1,000% agree with Joe. I think you have to build your network before you need your network. So you should kind
Yep.
of proactively be doing that anyway, so that when you're at a point of need or when an opportunity arises, that network is there and you can navigate within it, building those relationships earlier in the process so that, once a job is posted, at least in the last few that we've posted on our team, we get hundreds of applicants in a day or two, and then we shut it down. So it's almost like too late if you're reaching out at that point because we've already sort of closed the funnel. It's if you're reaching out to the hiring manager at that point, it might not reach them in time. So definitely build your network early, build relationships, make it meaningful. Reach out to folks who have interests that align with yours or whose career path looks similar to one that you're aspiring to, and try to find a commonality in a way to sort of bridge that initial contact. But definitely, the network should be something you're constantly feeding and building.
One good method too, I just wanted to build on real quick, and I learned this from Kirstie. You mentioned the one person that we actually hired. You referenced them earlier. That I learned from recently was they were doing one-on-ones as while they were an intern at Vanguard, for example, and that's how I met them. And I remember that they were just like cold one-on-ones, right? And I'll never forget the question she asked me at the end was, who are two more people you recommend that I could just meet with, that I get coffee with? And they were doing that after every single one-on-one. And I was like, that's like so easy to do, and just easy to get introduced to somebody else. So another tip there. Do cold emails work, Rakshita? They
No,
can, but chances are probably no. Yeah.
no.
I would also say that people that I've hired through networking were people that knew people that I either worked with before or people that worked with me currently. So there was some kind of connection there, and I could reach out to this person and say, "Oh, do you know about so and so? What's their work like? What do they like to work with?" And that is more likely for me to want to interview them than someone just reaching out cold.
I 100% agree with everyone. Um, I also wanted to go back to, I think Diana had mentioned this way earlier on, but Joe also kind of brought it back up about the digital footprint. Um, Branding is incredibly important, especially if you don't have the established network that can help support you in finding your next opportunity. Being someone that is memorable is going to help you a lot longer than your network could ever. Um, Being able to establish yourself as a person who is a SME in their space, who is charming, who's engaging, who is active on, socials, be it LinkedIn, or they are doing, some type of podcast, or they are doing videos on YouTube. There are channels that you can really shine in. ADP list, I don't know if anyone has, been a mentee or a mentor. I've definitely learned all about design and UX research through ADP list when I was first starting out. So being able to learn from the best of the best and having them see your work, sometimes it helps to say, I'm not hiring, but definitely connect with this person. Um, but continuously grow your brand, because that is your calling card. That is how, um, the UX network identifies you as, that person. Oh, have you seen such and such? Like Felix Lee, who co-founded ADP List. He started off, you know, as just a UX designer. He built something out of nothing by offering mentorship. Now people look to his commentary, his posts, to get an understanding of kind of like those feelers that every, UX designer asks, or, are wondering, or changes. So definitely feel free to stand out. I think it's more important than anything.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. I wish we had 800 more hours to answer all these awesome questions. But if the panelists would like to keep in the last couple of minutes going through and answering them in the chat, feel free. And I'm going to hand it over to Hannah.
And I'll hand that right over to Cecilia to announce our raffle winners for tonight.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. We learned a lot, so I would like to announce the winners for today. The first one we have is Ryan Javier. Our next winner is Willow Davis, and our third winner is Brianna Moore. Feel free to DM me your emails privately so we could send the books to you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much again to our wonderful panelists tonight. We really appreciate your time and great conversation. And thank you so much to the Philly Kai community for joining us tonight. Please definitely keep in touch with us on Instagram. We also have our website where you can sign up for our MailChimp. I see Dewani has also posted the link to signing up for our MailChimp newsletter into the chat as well. Tonight's event has been recorded, so feel free to check out our previous virtual events as well on our YouTube channel. But yeah, thank you so much again to our panelists and really appreciate it. And last, thank you to our sponsors who made today's event possible.